Hello, I decided to give you some hints on the task verbs that you're going to be expected to know in your free response questions. And since you're supposed to be answering two free response questions for your APES exam, I'm going to give you some hints here. So first, if you see the verb calculate, that would be a math question. And we're not going to have any math questions on the FRQ, so I don't think that you're going to see this task verb. But if you do, make sure that you are labeling your units and showing your work. But I don't think that there are going to be any calculations. Hooray! Something you might see is the verb describe. And we've talked about this in the past. And when you are to describe something, you are to provide relevant characteristics of that specific topic. And here's the deal, people. You can't ever say too much when you're describing something. When you're talking about, a keystone species. Make sure you define a keystone species and then give an example of a keystone species. If you're describing a biogeochemical cycle, describe that cycle in full. I don't want you to shortchange your answers and get not all the points because you are just writing one sentence when you're asked to describe something. So make sure that you are thorough in your explanations or your descriptions. The next term is explain. And so, of course, this goes into a little bit more detail when you're asked to explain something. This is going to be looking at using evidence or reasoning, telling how something happens, why something happens, giving those processes, patterns, positions, outcomes. You really need to go into depth here. So make sure that you are explaining yourself thoroughly. And again, always giving examples, okay? And of course, when you're asking for those explanations, it is going to be requiring more than one sentence. So do a good job in explaining yourself. Identify is the easiest task verb, okay? And that's just going to be identifying something without any type of explanation. If you are identifying something, it can be one sentence. It can be one word, okay? Short and sweet. I don't think that you're going to have anything that easy on here on the FRQs this year, but just in case, that's going to be the shortest answer that you give. Justify. This is new this year, this task verb. And what I foresee and how they're going to be asking you to justify something is by using a graph to give evidence or support your reasoning. So when you see a justify, you have to explain what evidence you have and then how that evidence supports your claim. So make sure that you're really making, giving evidence to justify whatever it is you're asked. And we're going to talk more about that later this week when you have some examples of that. Making a claim is the assertion that is based on evidence or knowledge, all right? You might be having to make a claim in some sort of scientific method experimental design setup based on the evidence that you're given. Proposing a solution, again, that's the same kind of thing with scientific method and experimental design. Once you go through those steps, you might have to propose a solution to the problem. And you need to make sure, again, that you're basing that on evidence or knowledge or a graph or something. I could foresee them talking about scrubbers or asking you about scrubbers. And I told you that you need to know about scrubbers. Make sure that you go back and you know that scrubbers are what pulls out the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide compounds in your coal factories and coal smokestacks. So if they're asking how to limit acid rain or decrease air pollution, scrubbers would be a solution to that problem. Some other things that you might see that we're starting to look at is environmental versus ecological versus economical types of effects and benefits. So if you're talking about environmental and ecological benefits, that is only related to the environment. It cannot benefit humans. So if you say trees provide oxygen to animals, that's fine. But if you say trees provide oxygen for humans, that's not going to be sufficient because that's a human effect, not an environmental effect. So be sure that you are looking at that and paying close attention, because I guarantee you that is going to be a question or part of a question, looking at environmental and ecological benefits versus the other ones. So ecosystem services. All right, so ecosystem services are those services that nature provides for humans. And this could also be an economic service. So you could say forests provide medicines for humans. Wetlands purify water. So whenever you have some sort of ecosystem service, that's going to benefit humans. And then specifically, if they say economic benefits, that's money. All right, so specifically, you're only looking at tourism, jobs, property value, that type of thing. Ecotourism, I would possibly see something on ecotourism, or maybe that could be a solution to something. So that's also an economic benefit. So make sure that when you see these types of terms that you understand what they're talking about. And you might want to print this page out, these 2 pages out, and keep them handy to refer to during your actual test and exam, because you as a quick reference guide along with your 1-page reviews.